And now we're going to have a brief address from Her Excellency Lolwah Alkhater, who is the spokesperson, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, State of Qatar, and after which she'll be interviewed by Kim Dozier from CNN. So ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to Her Excellency.
Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum. Good afternoon, Excellencies, ladies. Very glad to be here with you today. I'm very grateful to for the organizers for the invitation, and I wish you best of luck. So, I was asked to talk about disinformation in 15 minutes, which is, of course, mission impossible. That's why my intention is to give a glimpse over the most pressing questions and dilemmas when it comes to the question of disinformation, at least through the lens of media and politics, given my capacity. So my title is the official spokesperson of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. That's why oftentimes I find myself in a social setting, in a dinner, approached by sometimes a relative, a friend, and sometimes just a random person, would be leaning towards me, whispering, and always whispering, right? So tell us, Lolwah, what's the truth, right? The truth about the GCC crisis? What are the facts about, let's say, the Aramco attack? And to me, this is very interesting. How is it possible in an age of unprecedented accessibility to information that we still ask this question? Don't we have enough access to facts and information? Or what's the deal here? Maybe it's that we don't trust the sources? Is this a problem? Is it just too much information to process? Maybe that's the problem. So this leads me to the second slide, truth decay. And as a disclaimer, this is not a term that I invented. This is actually the title of a book published by Rand Corporation. In that book, Michael Rich and Kamana concluded that there are four main drivers for truth decay. That is the blur between facts and opinions. So what they said is the following. They said cognitive biases, and this is very inherent to our very human nature, so very difficult to avoid this, isn't it? But then they talk about the rise of social media and other changes to the information environment. We'll talk a lot about social media today. And then the demands on the educational system that limits its ability to keep up with changes in the information ecosystem. And finally, political and social polarization. Now, what do we know about this, right, in this part of the world? But I think this is not an exclusive phenomenon to our region. I mean, we see it in the US, we see it in Europe, and of course, especially in the aftermath of spring, we saw that. I mean, secularists versus Islamists, and the list goes on and on. But then there is one catalyst, one factor that has determined how we as human beings interact with each other and communicate and generate knowledge and even consume knowledge. That is technology. So we move from literary salons as a venue for negotiating our differences, identities, the public good, to print. And the print, of course, has widened the base of those who can produce knowledge and consume knowledge. But that was still limited as well to the literate population. And then with the advent of the 20th century and the introduction of audio and picture, suddenly it's not only the literate population that is becoming part of the public sphere and the public discourse. It's even the illiterate population. It's the rural areas, and so on and so forth. Now, how did that change the dynamics of the discussion? That's a question. And of course, the last episode of this is the introduction of web and eventually social media. And what effect did social media have on the way we communicate with each other. Many structural changes include boundaries, geography. Here in Doha, you can have someone tweeting about something that's happening, I don't know, in the Ecuador, for example. And then you have the amount. Can anyone possibly comprehend the amount of information that we have, that we're exposed to every single minute? That's a question that we need to ask. And then the context. And to me personally, this is one of the major dilemmas we're facing. The dismissed context in social media. No time, no space, no circumstances. I still remember very well a photo that was circulating claiming that foreign forces here in Qatar killed a Qatari soldier. And honestly, as a government, we had to find out, what's this picture? Is it photoshopped? Is it not photoshopped? And then eventually we realized the photo was genuine. It was not photoshopped, except for two other facts that were completely dismissed. One, it was taken 25 years ago. Two, it was taken in a different country, not even in Qatar. This is a problem. Three dimensions of the context are completely lost in social media, and that's why I keep saying that any historian that wants to document this period, may the Almighty be with them. It's very difficult. And then the power structures. And this is the most powerful structural fundamental change that happened. Who produces knowledge? Mia produces knowledge today. Sorry to pick on you. Please. Who produces knowledge today? Governments produce knowledge. Our dear friend Steve Clemens, who produces knowledge? We all do, right? Anyone who owns a phone produces knowledge, regardless of whether literate or illiterate, knowledgeable, not knowledgeable, and so on and so forth. What does this do to the power structures? A complete fragmentation of the power structures. Complete. Who has the authority? Who has the authority? Anyone who has a phone. What does it cost you to have a phone and access to the internet? It's almost nothing, thanks to our dear friends in India, of course. So, now, we've seen many manifestations of this intersection of media and politics. In the case of the Iranian Revolution 1979, the cassette and the smuggling of the lectures of Khomeini, that played a role. In the 1990s, with the invention of the Hotmail, the students mobilizing a movement against Suharto, that happened. And then in the Arab Spring, we saw the so-called Facebook revolution. And the last episode, of course, the GCC crisis, right? And then the main platform was actually Twitter. We know a lot about the GCC crisis. We've suffered from disinformation, from hacking, from many things. So the 24th of May 2017, our news agency was hacked. The Qatar news agency was hacked. Suddenly, it was after midnight, and yet all commentators, all studios, everyone was ready to comment on that. And then, of course, they failed to report that Q&A was actually hacked. And on June 5th, 2017, the blockade happened. And it was only then that we realized, in retrospect, that this hack, this information, was meant to become the pretext to justify the measures that followed after that. And of course, this is, a stat produced by Al Jazeera to show the bots that were created just before and during the crisis, and the GCC, of course. And you see, everyone's familiar with the term bots and electronic militias and so on and so forth. And the goal is not actually to create a consensus. It's not to create a consensus. It's actually to distort information, to distract attention, and to spread doubt. And then, of course, the famous case of Facebook shutting thousands of accounts. Many of them were actually in the GCC, specifically in the countries blockading Qatar. And of course, the last question is, can authoritarianism be reintroduced in the Arab region? And here maybe I should introduce my dear friend and host, Kim. Can we answer this question together? Can authoritarianism be introduced in the Arab region?